I've got Ozzie Jurek on the line, joining me from Stockholm, so there'll be a little delay as I chat with Ozzie. I mean, he's shipboard in around the Stockholm area, so who knows, but he has been on a tour of Europe. I've sent him there. I'm not letting him back in the country for a few more weeks. Ozzie, great to talk with you.
Nice to hear you. I hope the satellite feed works well. We've just left Stockholm on the MS Zuiderdam, and we went to some fabulous cities like St. Petersburg. We looked for Copenhagen and Stockholm and London. And boy, do I have stories about real estate.
Well, I just got to say, is there any truth to the rumor that you were kicked out of those cities, and that's why you've been seeing so many in the last couple of weeks?
Well, yeah, I barely make it for a day, and then they carry me out.
Yeah. Well, as you said, you've been to so many different places. Do you have, just a quick overview for me? I mean, one of the things when I pick up different things from the press over in Europe is that, we seem to obviously focus locally, whether it's in Toronto or Vancouver, obviously the changes in Calgary, that kind of stuff. But the bottom line is, I don't think our story is that different, at least when it comes to Asian capital.
Yeah, that is the most amazing experience that I have. First of all, we have capital that flees from Iran and Russia and Ukraine and Germany. Actually, a lot of money is leaving from Germany. I have a great story for you next week on that. A lot of people are leaving the euro. So that money goes into the major capitals of the world. But Mike, there's something else. The millennials are moving back into town. Like in Stockholm, 100 people a day are moving back. So that forces the government to build more houses. And the third thing is the low interest rates. In Stockholm, rather in Copenhagen, the negative interest rates, like it's 0.75 below zero, have had the effect that the mortgage payment is almost zero. I mean, the interest on the mortgage payment is almost zero.
We talk about affordable housing. Maybe that's what we need here is to get it down to negative. At least you can afford the payments then. Hey, look, I mean, obviously we've talked before about, Canada and Britain, Australia, New Zealand. We've seen our prices go up, at least in certain centers, as I say, the Toronto core, Vancouver, up until a whole bunch of measures they took, this is actually the peak about a year ago. But what about in Europe? I mean, has Spain recovered, for example, or I know Ireland started to.
Yeah, in Spain, we talked about it 2 years ago that we saw a change when I was there last, and that's about up 10% every single year. In Ireland, the headline in Dublin was 0% vacancy rates make rents spike as supply plummets. That seems to be the story, that more and more people get into the market because it's too cheap on the interest rate. I mean, a Danish homeowner with a mortgage whose interest rate is now adjusted, he pays $60 a month on a $147,000 loan. So you can just imagine how cheap that is. And so everybody wants to buy a house. So there's just not enough property there. In Stockholm, 140,000 new homes are contemplated that are needed instantly. And Sweden overall has a plan now to add 700,000 houses into the housing stock. And so what we're seeing is because of the low interest rate, because of people moving back in the big cities and the foreign money, prices are going up higher everywhere, with the exception of London.
Well, okay, I'll come to London in a sec. Just very quickly back to Copenhagen. With Copenhagen, I just see this problem, though. So they've got all these people involved in the real estate market. The prices are up, 40% in 5 years. Okay, then the rates start to rise. So maybe they got them into the market, but they may force them out because rates aren't staying below zero forever.
Well, that's the thing, and that's, of course, the economist is warning. He says house prices are overpriced like terrible. Mind you, they've been saying that since 2002. But every central bank and every major newspaper is warning about impending disasters. And the only solution I seem to have is to increase the taxes on it, but they're keeping the interest rates as low as ever because they can't get out of that treadmill.
Well, it's going to be interesting to see how this plays out. I mean, if you look at every major financial crisis that I can find in history, the government's fingerprints are all over it, whether it's the subprime in the States, which was pretty darn obvious. And I'm not sure they're not brewing something up. As I say, if rates start going up, you've encouraged all these people in to take maybe more house than they can afford at rates that might be 2 or 3% higher. who knows? One more last quick one for you, Ozzie. I want to go back to London, as I say. They did a similar thing. We talk about taxes to sort of slow down the market, which I think is absolutely the wrong approach. But they talk about taxes to slow down the market. We had the foreign buyers tax introduced out in Vancouver as an example. They didn't need it in Calgary or Edmonton because of the oil decline. They have a 16-point plan initiated in Ontario for that Greater Toronto area. But London had a stamp tax, which to me seems a little bit similar to our property purchase tax.
Well, yes, it is actually, because it's sort of an adjusted tax. Under £125,000, you pay nothing, and then it's 2% for the next and 3% and so on. But it goes a lot further. At $925,000, you're at 10%, and at $1,500,000, it's 12%. But this is the new thing, and so this has really been on since 2014, and it has slowed the market in terms of sales. But last year they added a second home where the upside over $1.5 million is 15%. So you have, if you bought anything for investment, that also goes in there. And that is not a foreign tax. It's on everybody. I can just see our governments drooling at the fact of extending that kind of a tax on all of the housing stock.
Well, the Green Party out in British Columbia's election wanted to have an escalating tax for zero for the first $200,000 in your property value, but going up to 12% on anything over $3 million, which basically says the entire west of Vancouver, which is really significant money. But I'm saying, what does it do, though? In the end, all you do, it seems to me, is kill the real estate market, but you're not creating affordability.
Well, the other thing is that number is a lot lower already. I mean, as I said, 10% at 925, and at £1,500,000, it's 12%, and in a second home, it's 15%. I mean, all of this grab for taxation makes me wonder. In my newsletter to my subscribers today, I'm really questioning whether you should ever put a suite in your basement or have a laneway house, because the next grab is going to be on a capital gain-free residence, and maybe that's time for another radio show. But we're seeing taxes as the only solution that all governments seem to have. But prices are on the rise everywhere. And in London, the price declines are mainly all in the $1.5 million plus range at the higher taxes. The general market is still up.
Well, Ozzie, we'll check back in with you next week. In the meantime, we really sincerely appreciate you doing this for us. Obviously, you're in the evening coming out of Stockholm on board. We really appreciate your insights.
Thanks for having me, Mike. Have a great night.
We'll take a break or break day, whatever it is. You have a great night. I'll have a great day.